Automation. Where would our modern world be without it? And of course, automation is everywhere, in our factories and within our workflows. And in DevOps, we know that automation is at the very heart. So of course, automation is central to everything, which is why for our DevOps engineer apprenticeship, we're taking a look at Knowledge Area K13 and automation. We can begin by looking at a general scripting language such as Python and automating backups using Python scripts. So come on, let's find a command line. And how about this for a glorious command line? Welcome. Welcome to an environment where we can learn a little bit more about automation. But first, to make life really easy for ourselves, we're going to clone the repository. And this is part of our automation, really. We don't want to be typing everything all of the time. So we can go through and point our git clone command through to github.com and the Urban Penguin and DevOps. Now that has come down, without specifying a directory, it's going to be creating a directory structure named after the repository. So that's going to be DevOps. And I've got a script in here inside of DevOps and backup called backup.py. When we go through and take a look at the contents of this script, we can start seeing then that we haven't got too much in here. We could manually count the commands, but really, are we meant to be automating things? So let's go through and count the lines. So we've got 12 lines of code, including some empty lines. Now, the first 3 lines are all to do with importing modules, so pre-written code. Then we get into the configuration area where we're setting a variable for the local directory. And you can see that that's pointing through to my home directory and the data subdirectory. I am the user vagrant on this system. The backup name is being set to text and variables. So we've included the F string formatter there. And it's picking up the date and time from our date time module. The sub-process run is executing our command, and take a look at it. It's running tar -czf, so to create, Z using a compressed format, and F is the file name. The file name we're referring to then is our variable backup name. Uppercase C is changing our working directory, and we're changing that to the contents of the local directory variable. We're then backing up the contents of that directory by using the dot. Once all that is done, we can print out a nice happy message saying that the backup is complete. Now, the reality is I don't have any data. This is just a demonstration. But it doesn't stop me creating the data directory, does it? So if I go through and create the directory data, and using the mkdir command in Linux, we can create directories. When I look at my working directory, so pwd, we can see it's home and vagrant. So that gives me home, vagrant, and data, the path of my local directory. To create some files, it's simple to use the touch command. So looking at touching inside of the data directory, file, and then using brace brackets, I can specify a range. Remember, this is all about automation. So I can go through and specify a range from 1 to 99. So this is going to create file 1 all the way through to file 99. Remember, automation, automation, automation. Now when we go through and look in the data directory, the tree command is convenient because it gives me a nice graphical layout. So I can see then that all of these files are in my data directory. So we had better get down to business and automating our backup. We can run then the Python 3 command, and we can then go through and run it against our script. So that was inside of the DevOps, the backup, and then backup.py. Now, it's not going to take long to run, really, is it? Because all of those files were empty, all 0 bytes. But it is telling me that it has completed successfully. So I'm getting really excited. Let's just run our listing here. And we can see that we have, in fact, created that backup file. And look, we've got a nicely formatted date, 2024-06-12, before our .tar.gz. So exactly as we wanted. Using our tar command, we can inspect our file. So T and F, looking at our backup file. And again, we can see that we've got all of those files included in our archive. So it does look really good, doesn't it? So we've looked at a simple mechanism to create a Python script to automate the backup. We could then specify this to run once a day through an automation job through systems like cron or WinAT, something like that. But if we want to review the script, we can try running something like this, going back in my history, looking for the last command that began with cat. When I look at it, it then shows me the contents of my script, and we're able then to go through and see, well, all of the bits and pieces that we looked at. As we go through and see, we can see where we set our variables and where we use the subprocess command to execute the tar command. Now look at you and look at what you've achieved. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to carry on with Python, but this time we're going to look at scripting to an API, an application programming interface. We're going to look at being able to list repositories in GitHub, as well as being able to create brand new repositories using our Python scripts. So come on then, let's look at some practical usage of an API, an application programming interface. Now, of course, these can really help with our automation, but we're really going to show how we can build it into our workflows to make life work for us more simply. We're going to be working with the GitHub API, so we're going to be able to see that we can create and list our GitHub repositories directly from our command line. So as I move into the DevOps and GitHub API directory, we've got a couple of scripts here, just for demonstration purposes, listing repos and creating a repo. So let's take a look at listing first. So if I cat out the list_repos.py, you can see that we're making use of the requests module, and this is commonly used with APIs. We're setting up our username. Now, obviously, that's my username for GitHub, and then we've got the token. Now, don't worry too much about that token. That token will already have been deleted, but it's a mechanism that we can use for authentication. So the reality is you should be making sure that any of your API tokens are really kept secure and not put in repositories. The API URL is really the API that we're going to connect to, the URL that we've been given to connect to make use of our token. We look at creating a response, and this response then is going to be our authentication through to the API URL. If that is good to go, we get a 200 back from that. Then we can populate our repos variable with the response in JSON. We can then print out our repositories, and for each repo in the repositories variable, we can print out that name. So not too many lines within our script, but we're going to be able to see that it becomes really effective as we execute it with Python 3 and list repos. And you can see then these are all of the repositories that I have in GitHub. But it becomes a very simple way that we can check our repositories from the command line without the need of going through to the GitHub website. So I really like the idea of this. As we go through and take a look at the create repo, well, it's very similar. We've got our username, we've got our token, but we've also got a repo name variable now, as well as our API URL. We then go through and look at creating our response from a requests.post now. And in this post, we're then creating our repository. If that response is good, then we can say we have created it. If it fails, we can say that we failed to create it. So again, a relatively simple script, but we're now looking at creating a repository from the command line. So come on, let's give this a go. So firing up Python 3, create repo, and you can see now that it tells me that it's created. Well, it could tell me anything. So let's go back and look at listing our repositories, and there we have our new repository created. We've learned how we can now use management of GitHub from the command line without the need of going through to the GitHub website by making use of the API. The important takeaways of automation are looking at tools like Python for scripting, Ansible and Puppet for configuration management, Terraform for deploying infrastructure, PowerShell scripting, making it repeatable and time-saving.
All that is left to say is thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, then you are probably sadder than I first thought. For more of this drivel, please subscribe, like and comment to @TheUrbanPenguin.